Vince, enough talking to me about Gen Con and how goddamn expensive it's going to be to get a hotel there and make me depressed before we start recording, but we're going to do it anyway. Welcome, Gazeboids, to Fireball, the Gazebo. Vince, how you doing?
I'm doing great, buddy. I am very excited about today's conversation because this is another one I've got a set of strong opinions around, like when it's okay to sort of cheat, quote unquote cheat,
Yep.
as the GM. So I think it's going to be a really fun time. And moreover, I hope will give some people some confidence to actually play their games the way they want and tell a good story.
Yeah, that's it. This is one of those things that sometimes people have had a good experience or a bad experience with, and oftentimes you had a good experience and you didn't know it because the DM never told you they were fudging their dice rolls. You only really see the negative side. Usually, if you've experienced this, it's because you felt strongly about how it went bad against you. But like all things, there's shades of gray. So we're going to talk about cheating in D&D today. But first, let's have a little story time. Vince, you have any update on your ongoing campaign?
I do. So we had a very combat centric game as they were doing a full dungeon crawl the week before. So this week was more, they wrapped up the last part of that dungeon. There was like one little area they didn't explore after they beat the boss, and they went and explored that and got their teeth kicked in by some big stone statues that were very hard to kill, but that's all right. Then the rest of the game, they had to go through a long process. There's this big magical plague that's afflicting the land. And that was ultimately coming from the dungeon. That's why they got there. They managed to cure the magic part of the plague. So what I mean by it is the plague itself was it couldn't be removed disease. Like when you tried to use cure disease and stuff like that, it just would only suppress it for a couple hours and then it would come back. So very dangerous, is killing a lot of people. And they shut off the magic part of it. So now it was just a disease and it could be cured, but people were still sick. Okay. And so then they went through the long process of they started with a little small village and then they got back to and they made a bunch of cures at the moon well that they had restored. That was the source of it. And that was all relatively straightforward. Just, but it was a lot of skill checks and working together and stuff like that. But then came the fun part. And this is what I want to talk about, which is curing the plague. What happens in the little village where they had maybe 40 some sick people? They could make enough cures at the local moon well that was right there. They could do it all. Then but they couldn't bring enough with them. They got back to the big city and now they've got 3,000 sick people quarantined in a part of town and they want to save people. Okay.
All right. It's a choice.
And so that led to an extended scene of them needing to figure this out. And their initial attempts, things went very bad very quickly because the town had locked down. But a bunch of people had come to the town trying to find help. So what happens? Well, they're all just stuck outside of town in squalor in a little tent camp city, right? And sickness is spreading through that because there's bad sanitation and all of that. And the person who can cure disease, like the paladin cleric, is oh, I'll go in and I'm gonna just surreptitiously remove someone's disease. I was like, okay. You get about 3 people in. And on the third person, when you come out of their tent, having cured them, there are 80 people there screaming at you who want help right now. Pawing at you, screaming at you,
Coughing
offering you their
face.
children, begging you to help them, crying, just at their wits' end. Okay? Because they tried to do the same thing with food. They didn't have enough food to help everybody. Because all those people are out there. There's no food for all those people out in that camp. They're well, we'll start giving them their food. I'm like, okay, you get besieged immediately, right? Because you just have walked into the middle of this thing and started handing out food randomly. And so they had to deal with the reality that they can't just walk in and cure this. Mob mentality is going to happen. People start fighting over this, beating each other up. You're causing chaos and injury and damage and suffering in trying to help. So what I like about a scene like this is normally adventurers can either punch their way to victory or the situation is small enough that they can contain it and they can overpower it.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
But this is the problem of mass people who are going to act illogically because, none of us are as dumb as all of us. And so they had to step back and actually think this through. Right. How do we actually solve this without causing a problem? Okay. And so then they had to make a plan of okay, we got to get in the city first. How do we get in the city? Okay, here's what we do. How many people in the city are herbalists or priests who can remove disease? How do we get them organized? How do we set up How do we get all the alchemists and herbalists in the town? Because we know how to make the cure and we can teach them. How do we get the right components and stuff like that, right? So they had to bring all of this stuff together and start working they had to go do the hard work. Like what people who are doing relief in the real world actually have to go through.
Yeah.
Right? Like you want to bring food into a starving area, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I should say an area afflicted by starvation. And so famine or whatever. And so they went through all that. And like, this is where I know this is a thing you like. The reason I wanted to talk about this is because I could have run this as like a big extended skill challenge type of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. It very much would have made sense as either one big skill challenge or maybe a series of like 3 skill challenges type of things, the sort of 4th edition skill challenge.
Yeah.
Thing. But I didn't do that. Okay. And I didn't do that. We're playing 2nd edition, but it would have been irrelevant. The architecture of a skill challenge can be put into any game. Right. I didn't do it because I effectively ended up using some of the same stuff, but I don't like formulating it that much. My problem with skill challenges always was, and this is probably a future episode, they feel too mechanical, right? I wanted to be able to react to their individual choices, and I wanted each skill check to mean something. So when they went out and talked to people and gathered these things and did this stuff, I wanted that to then set up the logical stuff of like, no, this is what you have to do next, or this is the consequences of what you've done, right? You can't just throw some skills at it and make some rolls and it's all okay now. Right?
Yeah.
And yes, I know that's oversimplifying skill challenges. We'll get into that whole argument in the future. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But I like actually like really making them step through. The most fun part was I knew there was an NPC in this town, just to return back to this. You remember a long time ago when they put the crown on the Glabberzoo and turned him lawful good, and then he left to go find himself?
Yes.
Yeah. He's in this town. I knew he was in this town from like the first time they visited a long time ago. Okay. But they didn't find him before, but this time they did. He's a priest of Torm now in this town. Like he's disguised as a human. And so they found him. They walk in. They're like, because they're visiting all the priests to like rally them up and try to figure out how many priests they have capable of casting cure disease in the city and doing all this as part of their plan. And they go into the temple of Torm, and this guy turns around, who they do not recognize, just looks like any random human. And he's like, "Oh my God, guys, welcome back! I'm so good to see you again." And they're like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "Oh, right." And he like pulls up his face and it's like him. And he's like, it's the Glabberzoo. And he's like, "It's me, guys." And he pulls his face back down. He's like, "What's going on? I found Torm. This is who I'm going to follow. This seems like the right god for me. I tried a couple different ones, but this one works." And so then they made friends with him and he was able to help them out in some ways because he's obviously very powerful and stuff like that. So the fun part of it was once they got the whole plan together and executed on they had there was negotiation scenes and talkie scenes and skill checks and all of that. It's like they executed on this whole big multi-pronged plan. They laid it all out for me and I was like, okay, it works. Right. We got to the actual thing. Yeah. And I was like, that works. You have put together enough of a solid plan. Like some things happen in there that aren't perfect, but it works.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I didn't make them roll anymore. I was just like, this happens. It takes you about 7 days to execute on this plan, and you more or less eradicate the disease from there. Now, some people still die because the time you have to take to do this properly, but you save thousands and thousands of lives, right? And that was the thing. When they got to that point, they had done all the work. I didn't feel like it was necessary for them to make any more checks or rolls. They did the work.
Yeah.
Just let it happen.
Right.
Right. They succeeded.
Right.
And they felt great at the end, right? They had to work for it, but that was all the rolls, all the talk, all that. That was the pre-work to get them in a good place. They talked through, I presented problems. They got to the next thing. Then it just worked.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. If you check all the boxes, then you don't need to just arbitrarily make more boxes.
Correct.
It can
sometimes you can just let things work.
Yeah.
It's good.
Right. Yeah. They had to step through. And like you said, there was dice rolls, there were decisions, there was reactions from the NPCs or the world or whatever that they also had to improvise on and do all these kinds of things. That is the task or the challenge. That is what they have to work through,
That's right.
Then, show them the fruits of their labor. Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's gotten me thinking more and more about skill challenges. So I'm going to put a note about we need to do a whole episode on those because I'm pretty passionate about those.
Yes.
For me, we play tomorrow, so I don't have any update on the session, but I'm looking forward to it because we went 2.5 full sessions of no combat, and it wasn't one of those sessions, or even at this point group of sessions, where it was you just went into it feeling like there was going to be no combat. It just kind of, you're like, oh, we never did fight, did we? It wasn't like we
Gotcha.
diplomacied our way through anything either. Was a couple points like we could have gotten into fights, we could have gone out and investigated, but we knew damn well that you're fighting for no reason. And I think our characters they're being like student aged 16, 17-year-olds, having one or two people in a group of the characters themselves having a little bit more wisdom or understanding their own mortality now for what they've been through, them being constantly on the run. They're like, I don't think we should. Like, that doesn't feel like there's anything talking through the reasoning behind those things. And so we just didn't fight. And we're knee deep in getting into underground dungeon. We had to like make our raft. We did a little like raft cut scene at the end of the last time, going under the city in these secret water caverns to get to like infiltrate the city through the underground. And it starts with, it's not so friendly down here. So that we're getting right into fighting, which I'm looking forward to. It's been a while since I've just rolled dice and smashed fish monsters. So
there is a lot to be said for rolling dice and smashing fish monsters.
Yeah, that's it. I did really quickly want to bring up a book that's right beside me right now, and I know Vince, you're going to be reading it soon. This is the book called Daggerheart, and it's something we already had planned on talking about as we'd heard things. It's obviously the new hotness coming from those who brought you Critical Role, although they didn't actually write this game. There is a rising chatter from the Underdark, as it were, of the internet about this game sucks ass. And there are a lot of people that are strong, staunch defenders of all things Critical Role. If you say those words, anything afterwards better be positive. So I want to get to the bottom of this myself, and I think Vince, you do too, because there's some wild rule systems in here, and the dichotomy between the story first side and the super fucking crunchy 4th edition style are in the same book, and they seem so diametrically opposed to me. And I'm trying to read the tea leaves here and try to figure it out. Read this whole thing front to back. We do a test run or something as well, and then we can have our own opinions on it and talk it through. So I just wanted to lay the groundwork for that. So, if I end up hating it, this is your way to kind of like,
this is your pre-warning.
Ease into that. Sure. I can tell you what.
We get some angry comments out now.
This morning I read the entire section on the spotlight system, and I have opinions. So let's get on to a little bit of news, though.
Little bit of news. Okay, we got 3 interesting little bits of news this week, and actually 2 of them are video game related, which is weird. But I mean, they're both D&D related too at the same time, or RPG related, I guess. So, anyways, here we go. First off, Invoke Studios, which is like a subsidiary of WotC, this just got announced. They're making a game called Warlock. Where you're would you like to guess who you are?
I'm guessing the Warlock.
You're a warlock. Yeah, that's correct. Good, okay. Very good.
Nice.
You got it. We got there. By the way, I just want a quick aside. We're gonna pause this little bit of news. I just realized I've got a complaint. Okay, the warlock thing put me in mind. I'm sorry, everybody. Pause. Little bit of news. Vince has a rant. He's got to go on. Here we go. All right, tuck in, folks. John, have you watched the first half of the new season of Stranger Things?
No, I'm waiting till it's all out and watching it front to back. I just binged seasons 1 through 4, start to finish, so it's fully fresh in my brain. But go ahead, do not spoil me.
I'm not going to spoil anything.
Okay,
I'm good. Like you, I'm just going to talk about an episode title.
Okay.
That's it. Episode 4 is called Sorcerer. Okay.
Oh, is this the sorcerer didn't exist in the timeline of this show?
I haven't. We're going to get there.
Okay.
We're going to get there. So, first of all, sorcerer is the wrong description because the actual correct description is warlock. I'm not going to say anything else, but the episode should be called Warlock. That would correctly actually describe what sorcerer is meaning to describe. Okay. So, number 1, obviously this game put me in mind of this, right? Number 2, the number of nerds who I've seen confidently go on the internet and lambast the showrunners because sorcerer did not exist, right, at the time this show is set, which I think is supposed to be like, I think they're at the end of 1988, beginning of 1989. Like it's supposed to be right
Something
around there
around like
when in this season. And then pin that to and say like sorcerer didn't exist till 3rd edition, so they wouldn't know. And I'm like, if you're gonna be pedantic, then actually do a Google search first. Okay.
That's just not true.
Sorcerer most certainly existed before 3rd edition. It did first, too. Sorcerer, as the name sorcerer or Zakaram, was first introduced in Arabian Adventures for Al Qadim in 1992. And although it was different, it was still the sorcerer you know and love. They didn't carry a spell book. They had spells in the blood. It was more like genie type magic is what it was meant to be. You're inheriting, right? That kind of thing. But it was like, it's sorcerer in all things but name. Yes, it had the funny Zakaram name as well, but it was called a sorcerer. Okay. And you didn't have a spell book. You just had spells automatically, a list you knew and could cast from. It was what we would think of as being the most definitive thing of that is a sorcerer, and what they would later draw on to create the sorcerer for 3rd edition. Now, 1992 is still after 1998.
1988.
Or 1988. Sorry, I apologize. 88. So fine. But if you're going to be a pedantic jerk on the internet, at least do a Google search first instead of going off the top of your head. This is what's wrong with nerds in the world. Okay. If you're going to correct somebody, try to have the right factual information yourself.
Right.
Very upsetting. Okay. That's it.
Okay. So
rant over.
So they weren't wrong in that it does not line up that sorcerer didn't exist. They were wrong though that it first happened in 3rd edition. Because I was like, when I read, I didn't do any other deep dive besides just seeing that was a thing that was being shouted about on the internet. But I was like, 3rd edition? No, that doesn't feel right to me either.
No, people pretend like everything that was in 3rd edition just suddenly appeared out of the ether and was just cut from whole cloth. Yes. Like they didn't go back and actually, like 3rd edition was drawing on everything 2nd edition had and trying to clean it up.
Yeah. Also to like avoid the spoilers and to know who they're talking about when they're talking about the sorcerer, aka should have been warlock. If in fact this is an enemy or an NPC that they're talking about, then their argument is null and void, because for in campaign settings, in adventures, sorcerers existed in Dungeons and Dragons,
of course,
since the beginning. It's a term, it's a fantasy term used to describe a magic user or whatever. And so it can be the arch sorcerer, who so and so. So they aren't necessarily wrong. Now, if they're talking about, I don't know, I'm not going to. Let's say they're talking about Will, and that Will is the sorcerer. Then is Will in this situation considered a PC?
There were other variants to avoid any pedantry. There were other variants of similar type casters put out in Dragon Magazine and other things even before that Arabian Adventures one that were very similar in how they function.
Yes.
The first time you see that word being used in that way exactly is the Arabian Adventures thing.
And also historically, in fantasy through literature and this, that, and the other, the terms mage, wizard, and sorcerer are oftentimes
just interchangeable. Yes.
So
yes,
I'm not. It's
Merlin the Great and Powerful Sorcerer, Merlin the Great and Powerful Wizard would all sound perfectly correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, I appreciate the rant.
Okay, back to this. So they're making a game called Warlock. It's their next video game. It comes out in 2027. It's like a third-person action adventure game. I watched the description. I think I watched the description of it, and I was like, I watched the little trailer video, and I was like, cool.
Does it just look like
Doesn't seem interesting.
Does it look like Dark Souls? When I think of that style, that genre, I think of just everyone's trying to emulate Dark Souls.
No, it doesn't have that aesthetic, but maybe play wise, it's the same. I haven't really played any of those games. So I can't say how they like button click and play, but like it doesn't have that aesthetic. I'll say that.
Next one.
All right. Next little bit of news. This is one I'm really excited for. Let's talk about the lack of edition churn. You want to talk about somebody who's really rode this train for a while. Toon. Are you familiar with Toon?
Is this any relation to Looney Tunes?
Yes.
Holy shit.
Yes, very much so.
Oh, wow. Did not expect that to be your answer. Okay. No, go ahead.
Okay. Toon is a Steve Jackson Games.
Of course it is.
Game. That came out in 1984 originally. Okay. It was very fun. It's a very fun game. It's great for like playing with kids and stuff like
Mm,
that, or like doing a one shot of it is really, really, it's a great one shot game. It's so funny and silly. Okay. And it's literally meant to play, you're playing Looney Tunes. Yes,
ah,
that's what it is. You are all playing, think like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, right? You know, like,
right.
okay, you're playing tunes, like Toontown. You live in Toontown, you all play tunes. And just like in Roger Rabbit, you can't die. Obviously there's the dip or whatever.
Right.
That's why it's so scary. That's the whole point of the movie, because tunes are immortal otherwise, right? And yeah, like the fun part about the game is, yeah, you can't die. That it was very original in its time because it's full of like silly tables that you roll on to do like silly things and gain silly abilities. It has very funny character creation because you're making your little own wacky tune in the
Right.
style of like classic
Warner
Warner
Brothers.
Brothers
Yeah.
and Tex Avery cartoons and stuff like that, right? And it's just a really fun, lighthearted time. Again, if like it would be, I really do think it's a classic game to bring kids into role playing because, or at least for my time, our generation, and maybe
Yeah.
like the elder millennials of the world, because we grew up watching those cartoons all the time, right? So they're actually releasing a second edition of this game. In fact, it goes live on Backer Kit tomorrow. As of this, I had to think when this is coming out. It goes live tomorrow, the 17th.
Yes, it
Okay.
goes out live on
Because
Wednesday
obviously
the
we're not
17th.
recording this the day it comes out. So
Right.
yeah, the 17th of December. And yeah, so it's had the same edition for 41 years. And they were like, you know what? Second edition time. And I looked at it and I was like, now this is something I could get behind, because their thing, they're like, we went and looked at now more modern cartoons. So like they're bringing in, you know, stuff like Animaniacs and newer cartoons, right?
I do not think of Animaniacs when I think of newer cartoons, but
Keep in mind, they were up when they wrote this, they were operating off cartoons from the 70s. I just mean like the last 40 years of cartoons. The key is they never mentioned anything anime wise. So I assume they're still sticking to like silly.
it's a totally
cartoons.
different kind of thing. Because anime
Absolutely.
is a closer to like an action TV show than it is a cartoon TV show.
I agree. They're still focusing on the kids cartoons, right?
Yeah.
They're just saying like more modern kids cartoons. They referenced a bunch of them. I'm pulling out Animaniacs because it's one of my favorites of all time, but they referenced a bunch.
Because this was, if it was only since 84, then they missed the true heyday of like Gargoyles, Darkwing Duck, Chippendales Rescue Rangers, the Animaniacs,
Correct.
like the
Tiny Toons.
That's where it's at. Tiny Toons, that kind of stuff. And Stimpy, like
Yep.
there's
Exactly.
all of that
So
stuff.
all that's going to be like, you'll have options that relate to all that stuff. That one of their things on the reasons you should back this was even more new, silly tables. And I was like, these are people who know their audience.
Yes.
I love it.
That is
good for them. I want this to be mega successful.
What a great bit of news. The kind of thing that probably wouldn't hit my radar, but I'm so excited to hear. I'm going to look it up. Like that's the kind of thing I would love to run as one shots, because that's basically my personality in a RPG.
It's such a good one shot game. Okay. Last bit of news is did you ever play the Temple of Elemental Evil video game that came out in like 2003?
No, I played.
Okay.
I played it on Dungeons and Dragons, but not a video game.
I was going to ask, have you ever played the Temple of Elemental Evil yet?
Yes.
Classic dungeon, very, very difficult dungeon,
very
obviously,
difficult. Yes,
for many reasons. But the video game was classically like pretty buggy and problematic and hard to play. It was just kind of bad. So they're actually re-releasing it. They remastered it. I think it's available, or I shouldn't say I think. I know it is available now as of there are people listening to this on Steam or whatever. And it's been like updated and fixed and now apparently works. So like it's been remastered. They went through and fixed the game. So if you're jonesing for some like some D&D 3.0 rule set, because that's what it uses. It uses like the absolute true to life D&D 3.5 rule set, right? And it is the Temple of Elemental Evil. It is what it is, right? So
it's a solid rule
from
set
the Village of
video.
Hamlet right on.
It's a solid rule set for video games.
Sure.
I will.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that the people went back and remastered this game and then re-released it. Like, what a choice! This is not like I didn't think of it as crazy popular, but I do think of it as like an amazing adventure. I love Temple of Elemental Evil. I have run it a couple of times. I like it a lot. So there you go.
I mean, you got to capitalize on that Baldur's Gate popularity before that
Sure.
flame dies down. Let's not kid ourselves what's going on here. But yeah, that's cool. I always thought, speaking of Baldur's Gate 3, I did start playing that game. I don't know how long ago, it was a year ago, and I didn't get very far into it because it was 5th edition, and you got to start to see the 5th edition matrix, and it just made me mad.
Sure.
I was like, oh no, it's ruining my game. Anyway, I could talk a whole lot about why I don't like that game too, but let's get on to the main topic. So we're going to talk about cheating today, and we use that in quotations. And the main thing that we want to discuss today is fudging dice rolls, because that's the biggest one. That's the one with the most snafus, the most drama behind it, the most well-known. But before we get into that, I first want to set our table with potential other ways, other things that could fall under this umbrella of manufactured cheating. So first off, I will pose this question to you, Vince. Are there other quote unquote acceptable ways to cheat or examples of cheating, specifically from the DM side? Right. We'll talk about players in a second. DM side in tabletop RPGs.
Yeah, I mean 100%, right? So yes, it is important to say we're talking mostly here. We'll cover players, but mostly here, just assume we're talking about from the DM side. So we're talking about fudging dice rolls and stuff like that, right? So this is the fudging the rolls is often the flashpoint of the discussion, which is unfair because there really are, as you said, a lot of other ways you could do it, right? Like, oh, their ability does something different. A DC gets switched around and is easier or harder.
Yeah.
So a monster dies or lives, even though it took enough damage. It did or didn't take enough damage to die or live, right?
Yeah.
They suddenly have a weakness or an immunity or a whatever, right? Like basically you fiddling with the individual stuff somewhere midstream. And what's funny is people will set it in their mind that there's a difference between if you do it before the game starts and you do it in the game, right? Because nobody would argue that you're not allowed to fiddle with the monster beforehand, right? Like if you write the monster, okay, and you say, actually, these orcs are like, they grew up on a lava cauldron. They're infused with elemental fire spirits, so they're all resistant to fire. Okay, cool. That's just like you write that down on the orc. That's all fine, right? But if in the middle of the thing, they suddenly like something changes and you like make him take less damage from a fire effect or something, they're like, nope, that's now you're cheating, right? Okay. So, but yes, there's lots of ways you can fudge and fart and be futz with these rules, right? Basically everything. Moving in and out of range, having spells have a slightly bigger effect or smaller effect, or get somebody or like that shouldn't be in the effect or whatever. Right. Yeah. Like you can imagine all of these tweaks. Any of them are fair game that we're really talking about, right? It's the GM fudging the base rules presented on the page.
Right.
Or by the dice. Yeah. In some way.
And I think they all have a core commonality. And that is, there is some level of breakdown of rule or description or whatever that there is solid black and white information on. The key is the PCs do not have, or the players do not have access to that information at that time. And because they don't have access to it in the moment, the DM has the ability to alter that information. So then when it's presented to the players, it is different than what it was intended.
That's right.
You can't do this if the players have full access to information. And you can't, just like you can't do this when you don't roll behind a DM screen. I mean, you can.
Yeah, this requires hidden information.
It requires hidden information.
Absolutely. Yeah. We should state that like doing any of this requires hidden information.
Yes. Hidden information, which is, there is so, I mean, hidden information, and maybe we do a small deep dive on this right now because it is a big part of this. And it's actually a big part of what makes Dungeons and Dragons or tabletop RPGs what they are. You don't have access to everything at all times, which then leads you to need to interact with the world in all of its phases in order to gather more information to make more decisions. That's the kind of the core of what the game is. So you can't have access to everything.
Yep.
And how you poke, prod, talk, peek, perceive, whatever, smell, whatever, all things that you're doing, that is about information gathering to help you make decisions. And so if you give them everything, if when the skeleton walks across the hallway, it pops up like the Fallout pause screen.
Yeah, if you can like Pip Boy it or
Yes.
whatever and see its like stats, like, oh, it's, vulnerable to bludgeoning, takes half damage from piercing, blah, 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 right? Immune to poison, disease, and so on,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, exactly.
And you, even more than that, you'd know the AC, you'd know the total hit points. I mean, typically with the Pip Boy, you know it's total hit points, but you know it's AC, you know it's plus to hit, you know what its damage dice roll is with this plus damage. Like, if you had all of that at all times, you take the magic away of the game, of the uncertainty, of in the real world, if someone pulls out a rusty Bowie knife and they're going to come at you, you don't know what their proficiency in Bowie knife is. You don't know how many stabs you can take before you bleed out. Like, we live in a world of unfull information, so
yes.
That is what we're trying to replicate in the game. And in a way, oftentimes the reasons that I find like arguments or one-upsmanship and like the least fun examples of playing the game for me happen when a player uses player knowledge to pull back the curtain of what's happening at the table.
Yes.
I know this is a mimic, and I know the mimics, you can't do this, and I know the mimic is going to murder us based on our level, and I know. Your character doesn't know any of that. And so sometimes as a DM, you're trying to keep that mystery.
Well, I do want to just interject. It's not always bad. I like it when you have characters. So, like, we have a necromancer in my Tuesday game, right? When undead come around, I tell him all the stuff he knows. Like, he's like,
that's cool.
What do I know? And I'm like, yeah, of course. You know this, you know this, you know this, you know this. Like, right? You know lots of the common stuff. Like, he's a necromancer. He's studied in this thing. He has all justification to know an incredible amount about the monsters without making a check.
That is a
okay,
very good point, and I thank you for putting that in. I do not think you hold on to information as a DM like they're your treasures that you need to hold on to for dear life. Giving information is a reward, and players earning information for how they interact and how they built their character. And the more that they grow as that character, the more information you can give him about undead, and the more things he unravels and he gets more access to without dice rolls. Absolutely right. Information is an important thing to be,
yeah, and like that's just it. You want them to be able to gain and interact and learn information about the world. Sometimes they'll just know it because it's an area of their specialty. Like I'm big on, like, if somebody has good excuse to know something, don't make them roll dice.
No,
just tell them. Right when the ranger's out, and like, we've got a ranger. He's very studied in various things, and so like when they're out and they see weird plants or fauna or like an unusual path, or they're doing this, I don't make them make checks. Checks are for like you're tracking somebody hard, right? Like that's trying to obscure their tracks. That's what a check is for, right? Like there's competition of some kind going on, right? Or like you're trying to disarm a trap, and that trap is dangerous and might kill you. Like that's what a check is for, right? But like if the rogue sees some locks or is just studying a lock, like I'll just tell them about the lock, and so on and so on and so on and so forth, right? Like let people know stuff.
There's a history of really good articles and even breakdowns within core rule books of different editions of different games over the years of people talking about checks and talking about the
when to
ebb
make
and
them
flow,
versus
when to use them, when not. The kind of rule of thumb that I use, and this isn't always a hard and fast thing, but I usually try to remind myself of this, is I make you make a check if time is of the essence, if time is a factor, right? So tracking is an example of that. We're trying to catch him. We're trying to catch up to him as quickly as possible, or they're running away trying to hide. Time is a factor. We can't take all day to find these tracks. So number one is time a factor, and which usually means then in combat, if you're trying to do something, time is a factor because there's a lot going on and time is of the essence. You can't just sit there and let yourself get stabbed in the back 40 times. Okay. So time is number one. And number two is if failure in an attempt would lead to some kind of negative consequence, then you need to make a check. So
I would say 3 if there's an active force opposing. Some checks are like actively opposed checks. Like if somebody is also on the other side acting against you, then like, you're both, simple example, you're both pulling a rope. Okay. Like that's a check because like, you're strong, they're strong. Who's stronger?
Right.
That's a check. We're going to find out. Okay.
Yep. Absolutely. That one is, I usually kind of, it naturally falls into one of those or the other, but it's probably better to just keep that separate as a third. Cause then it's just like it's a cut and dry, somebody else is opposing, because
this is one of those things. By the way, this is a chance where I cheat all the time. People will make a check and I'll futz with what the sort of DC quote unquote is that they need to hit that. Right. If I want them to know it, they make the check and like they get a little lower than I thought. They're like, no, only a 12. And I'm like, no, it's good enough.
Yeah. Yeah, good thing your plus
I don't care what it says in the book.
I think there's something about that too. Is like, good thing your plus is so high that allows you to roll crappy and still get a 12. It gives them an encouragement of the investment that they made as their character in a check. Exactly. That they can still
Plus,
succeed.
with the 12, you can like hold back some small piece of information that they then don't know. You can give them like most of the picture, but not the whole thing, right? Quick side note. This is one of the reasons I really like second edition non-weapon proficiencies. Okay. It is a different math, and it says something much different. Since third edition and in most games like that, you're dealing with a DC system. In other words, you roll a D20, you add some bonus. You're aiming for some DC that's either arbitrary or like semi-arbitrarily set by the world, like easy, medium, hard, difficult, impossible, blah, 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 right? Usually between like 5 and 30, right? And that's fine. The problem is that at like low level, you're not really good at anything. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't know a lot of stuff. Second edition very much inverts that. But like the way most skills work in second edition is they're stat dependent. So you take like appraisal or something. It's an intelligence based skill. Okay. You're rolling a D20 and you're trying to roll your stat or less. Okay. So if you're like a smarty smart pants wizard with like a 17 or 18 intelligence, okay, unless there's a big penalty to the check because it is something highly unusual.
Right.
Okay. You just know it. You're assumed to just know it. And like 85, 90% of the time, you will nail that check. You are assumed to be an expert in the thing. But the non-weps are much, much, much tighter, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? Like each category is much more specific. Right? So it's broader. You have like more options, but you become deeper knowledgeable about each thing. Anyways, I like that theory because then at a low level, you can be like a great cook.
Right.
Right? You just are. You have a high stat in that stat. You've trained hard in it. You're a great cook. That's not to say you could make every dish in the world, but you're a pretty freaking great cook.
But that doesn't also mean the stat that's associated with cooking just means that you're universally pretty darn good at everything that uses that stat. That doesn't need to also be true. That's what's really great about low level characters is they don't cast a wide breadth, but they do have some interesting pockets of depth. And that's what makes a character interesting. And it allows you to.
Absolutely. Yes. I like specific, interesting skills. Okay. So let's get back to the cheating. I'm going to sort of talk both sides of this. I want to steel man both sides of this argument real quick. Okay. Because that's probably the easiest way to do this. Let's just steel man both sides. The steel man argument for why you should fudge with dice rolls is it will make a better collaborative game. Ultimately, you are telling a collaborative story. You as the GM do have a disproportionate amount of power though. You're in charge, right? You're doing it in partnership with them, but they don't have God powers, you do. Okay? So the question is, who's really in charge? You or the dice? Who is actually in the pyramid? Who actually sits at the top of power? Do the dice sit above you and you're subservient to them? Or do you sit above the dice? I argue you sit above the dice because your number one job is to tell a good story.
Mm-hmm.
And if the dice do something at that moment that would make the story materially worse, it is your job to change them.
Okay.
Okay. And tell a better story at that moment. Maybe that means a PC doesn't go down at that second. Maybe it means they do go down. Maybe it means they do hit or don't hit. Maybe it means they do enough damage to bring the monster down that, that monster had 22 hit points. They hit it for 18. You're like, you got him.
Yeah. And I think,
right?
I think to piggyback on this, because I want to take this same side as you take this same side. And then we both take the other side. So I think the two different examples, the one you just gave there a second ago, is actually a different example for a different reason for that. It's not related to story. It's related to pacing, and it's related to keeping the game flowing. Having the
I agree. I before you even go, I agree. Keep going.
so you have one side is, which I totally agree with, is like you are sculpting a story. You have access to more information of where it's going to go, where interesting spots it could fall and go in a different direction. You're not releasing that, but you're keeping them to the most drama, the most chances for an interesting thing to happen. You're kind of keeping it to go that way, and it's nudging. This is not bumper bowling, right? You're not having full control over everything. You are. Sometimes sessions will go by where I don't fudge at all because there's no reason to. There has to be a good reason in my head to when it comes to story. I don't want to have a strict control over this game and where the story goes, but there are moments where it's much more obvious to me, seeing 3 steps ahead, of this is a turning point where it could go to A or to B. And I know A is going to lead to a stronger thing, and B, it's a much shakier. Let's just nudge it towards A. So that's section 1. Section 2.
Agreed. You mentioned like pacing and stuff like that. I think that's exactly right. If the fight's long, if they're gonna win, they die. The hit kills them. Just let it happen.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's like, why are you sitting here torturing everybody? It's boring.
Right. And that was my second point, that's not story related. That is the pace of the game related. And the two main ways that you do this is the example you just gave: close enough, kill it. Or when I roll damage and I double check, that's why I always think it's important that the DM has full access of information of what's every player's current hit points. So many times when we have DMs that do not keep access to that information, they drop someone and they immediately go, "Oh, you were only at 4?" Like you need to have that. You need to know that. You need to be able to work around that. And that does not mean, even if you don't fudge dice rolls, even if you don't pull punches, you just need to know. You need to have good access to all that information. But here's the other example. There's 2 monsters left, and the party is largely mostly full health. One person is pretty low, though. The kobold hits them for 3 instead of 4, and they don't drop, because all we've done is slow down this process. There is no fear of that person being like perma-dead.
Right.
We just have to then go through this stupid rigmarole of, well, then I go over and I bind wounds, and then like, oh, I'll make sure that the kobold doesn't get them. Oh, I go, there's no use of resources that we're like, I'm draining on the players. I'm just knowing they're just going through the motions. I don't like going through the motions for no reason. So that's the other reason. It's like, yeah, we'll pull a punch there, or I'll make them smack them a little bit harder and be like, all right, you were at 6 hit points. It was going to hit you for 5. I'm going to have it do it for 6. Y'all went in and you were dumbasses and you made a really, really stupid decision. And you put yourself in this bad moment because of your poor planning or no planning. More often than not, I do this not from poor planning, because poor planning infers that they thought something through and they came to a dumber decision. You thought something through, I'm always going to reward you, even if you came with the bonehead decision. The non-decision is what I will fucking rain down hell on you for that. For just like autopiloting my game that I spent all week planning for, and you autopilot every decision. All right. These kobolds are going to wreck your day because you decided to just walk through everything. I'm not afraid to do that either. That has really nothing to do with story with that. That is, you need to understand that the world is dangerous and full of monsters, and you need to be proactive in your thought process. So yeah, that's probably the number one way I will fudge dice.
Right. And I think, yes, part of the steel man of this argument is, look, you're not always making it softer.
No.
It's not as though you're constantly weakening the damage or letting the monster go down instantly. Sometimes, the most common way that I do this in my games, I'll tell you right now, is keeping monsters up who I think shouldn't die yet. But somebody smacked the crap out of it, right? And I'm like, well, I want this monster to get in one more attack or one more round. This is going to be too fast. The pacing will be off in the other direction.
Right.
The damage monkey of the party that's just like an absolute nightmare goes up and just like cracks into something, and it should have felled it. I'm like, okay, they're up. And then like the rogue comes in and does like 7, and I'm like, you got him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. Number one, that's so much better for the person who does, like, they're like, yay, I contributed, right? The damage monkey's going to get plenty of kills. I don't do it every time or something like that, right? Of course. The damage monkey gets they drop plenty of bodies. Okay. That's their job. But when they just drop everything and the other people in the party who also want to attack never get to feel like they meaningfully get to drop a monster, it's kind of sucky for them. So I'll just like leave it alive and let the next person bring it down and be like, hey, good job, buddy. And that's fine. It's fine. Or maybe they're alive, they make one more attack, then the rogue drops them. Even better. Even better.
I think that is something I hadn't really considered, but I also do. It's about when you have more of that control and you utilize it and you're bending things. You're not bending things from 100% success to a 25% success over a period of time. You're changing it from 100% on this like uber monk that can one shot most things. You're changing it from 100 to 85. You're moving it just enough. And the purpose for that, and I think what I think is really important here is it's about the excitement and the engagement at the table. You can get yourself into a situation where that uber monk kills everything, that you have players that are actively mentally checking out of your game because they don't feel valuable. I'm making sure through my slight manipulation of behind the DM screen rolls or decision making on the fly that have nothing to do with me rolling a dice, is that I want to make sure that that spotlight, that feeling of value and importance is equally distributed as best I can slightly manage it, you know?
That's right. And the reality is we do this all the time. Even if you're not fudging dice, you still do this, okay? Because you make the monster that could attack this guy who's down and kill them, attack the tank instead. You know what I'm saying? You make the fireball not include these two people because you know it'll just flatline them. Or you do make it include those two because they need a little bit of a licking.
Yes.
Right? Or something like that. Or whatever, right? The point is you make decisions about like what the monsters and the bad guys in the world is doing that are responsive to the PCs. And all of those are infused with your own subjective desire of how you steer the game. This is literally no different. We just get to dice and suddenly everybody gets all sacred about it, right? Okay.
The magic rocks.
That's steel manning that side.
The magic rocks must tell us the future.
Yeah, exactly. Like we're tossing the bones or something, and it's like, yeah.
Read the bones, Willow. Okay.
Yes. Okay, I want to steel man the other side.
All right, other side.
Okay.
Other side.
So the other side of the argument is, look, this is a dice game, and ultimately the dice, the reason you let them win and you do make them the top of the pyramid is because they are a completely neutral arbiter on the world, right? They don't have those emotions, those subjectivity. They don't make those decisions. Yes, I know that you as a GM are going to make some decisions, go harder, go softer, do these things, don't do these other things, right? But in the end, the dice can't be swayed. They can't be pleaded to. They can't be, right? They never get tired. They never, they're the Terminator, right? Okay. They're just going to keep coming. And like, that's just it. The dice decide, right? And that would ultimately be what the steel man of this would be is there's an innate fairness to it. Like, yes, sometimes people will just die and sometimes they will live. But we know we're operating by a completely neutral, fair arbiter. The RNG of these tiny rocks that cannot be manipulated or appealed to or changed, right? And it tells a world where we can all get together and confidently know that whatever has happened, but it's been fairly decided. No human put their thumb on the scale. I think if people have had people see this as a way to also stop arbitrary bad GMs, because there are a lot of bad GMs in the world, and it's the most toxic, horrible thing that actually ruins the game. Like bad players you can deal with.
Yeah.
Bad GMs ruin games.
Yeah.
Stop campaigns, break up groups.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't avoid it.
Right. Neutral dice are a way to constrain that GM. That would be the steel man of that argument, right? Is that it's fair. It stops the worst GM behavior. It keeps bad GMs from acting on their worst impulses. And no matter what, the PC's just like, let the dice fall. That's what you always hear, right? You just let the dice fall. This is like an old thing that comes up in a lot of like grognard circles.
Right.
Okay.
And to piggyback on that, because I'm going to take the same side with you here. I will say that I do want to interject that, like, rolling the dice, as it were, does not stop a bad GM from being a bad GM. Like that.
Of course.
That's complete ridiculousness. Like, if it were as simple as that, oh gosh, I wish we lived in that world. But the other thing that I want to bring up with that is, like, the dice roll where they may. That's what we deal with. That's what the players have to deal with. You know, if kind of like, once it's been determined that the monster you've been trying to whack on this entire time is 16 AC, which players will figure out within a round or two. That's like, oh, 15 missed, 17 hit or 16 hit. Like, they determine it. Once that's determined, you can't fudge that. They either hit or they miss. So why do you get to then fudge it on your side? We're keeping it a level playing field for the players, which is a feel-good thing, that everyone is dealing under the same constraints of the rules of the 16 AC is the 16 AC. I don't get to manufacture another +1 to hit on my sword attack on the 4th round just to finally fell this thing. I rolled, it was only 15. That was it. Move on. Like, there is some fairness in the understanding of players get frustrated when they're rolling cold for a while. They can't, fudge it and stop the cold streak when they really needed it the most. I really needed to do this thing before it decapitates the cleric that's bleeding out. I really needed to hit here. You didn't. No.
Yep. Yeah, because the rocks are the arbiter for the players, right?
Right.
So it's like, that's what I'm saying. There's like a fairness. Why am I constrained by this thing? Because obviously, like, I mean, I'll come down pretty strongly and say here that obviously players shouldn't be changing their dice rolls unless they have some mechanism to do so, which is fine. If they have like a legal cheat, right? Like, you have some ability that says once a day you can change your dice roll to this. Okay, cool. That's fine.
Hey, everyone,
But,
take lucky as your background.
Of course, yeah, rerolls are always the most powerful thing you can ever get your hands on. Yes. But like, how come I can't do it but you can?
Yeah.
Right. That feels unfair.
Yep.
Right. It's the Scarlet Witch thing. Right. That doesn't seem fair to me.
Yes.
And so so that's the two sides as they're drawn. Right.
Mm. Oh, I have another for this side too. I have another for this side. And I actually heard Brandon Lee Mulligan talk about this recently, and it got me thinking, and I think it's a really valid point. And he said that when the dice come up in a way that's not what you expected or not what you wanted, that is the magical moment of Dungeons and Dragons, of how does the world react because of it, and how does it change? When this dice was meant to be success, and instead the dragon engulfs you entirely in flames, you have to then pivot. And the world has changed, and the story has changed, and something you did not expect is now happening. And that is role-playing games with dice. We have to react, and we have to showcase, again, going back to, as a dungeon master, this is now your responsibility, is to work with those to make something amazing or dreadful or engaging happen based on those dice rolls that you did not expect.
I like that.
And I'm like, I respect that. You do not have a stranglehold on where this is going, and that includes where the dice fall. Your job is to be able to be nimble enough to see how that happens and to react to it and to keep it or make it better. Because sometimes you think you know it all, but none of us do, especially as a dungeon master. You think you have this thoroughly well manufactured and crafted aged cheese of a storyline. I mean, we ain't Rothfuss here, folks. Like, stop it. It's not so holy. You should not hold it so close to your chest that you don't seed some humility and let the game organically flow. And that includes dice, not just what your players want to do, but also what the magic rocks dictate. So there's another argument for this, for do not fudge those dice. I like that
very much. That's great. That's great. Okay. So now that we've laid out both sides, let's talk about kind of, where we fall and why we fall that way, right?
Basically, what's the right answer? We're going to give you the solution,
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I want to talk about the best GM I've ever played under. The best GM my entire life was my good friend Travis. He's not with us anymore, which is a shame. But he truly was. I mean, when I think of like the greatest GMs, I've played under a lot of GMs in my life, a lot of people. And I've never played under anybody so good. And I know for a fact he fudged stuff all the time. Okay. And the reason he would do it is because he knew the right moment, because he was incredibly empathetic and incredibly observant. And he knew the right moment to do it where it would make the character feel great and like they had participated in something truly unique and memorable and amazing. And importantly, he knew when not to do it.
Yeah.
And when to let the dice fall exactly as you just described.
Okay.
And and all of that was through, he was always deeply connected to the players and what they were experiencing. Okay. And that, I think, is ultimately the secret weapon here. I tried to learn from him, right? Like, because if you sit there and you fudge every roll all the time, if things feel completely arbitrary, like if you fudge enough, it will become obvious, right? Even though they can't see, they'll know.
Yeah.
They'll get the feeling that like, oh, this is just whose line is it anyway? The rules are all made up and none of this, the points don't matter.
Yeah.
Right.
That is a point of no return.
Correct.
Yeah. You
cannot let that happen.
You can't unsee that,
Right. Once that bell is rung, that's it.
Right. And so if there's any hesitation on do it or not, I would say err on the side of don't fudge it. Because if you are uncertain, you are only putting yourself, your story, your players, the veil that you've created at risk. It has to be with really distinct purpose. Why?
Yeah. Ironically, I tend to do it more. My own personal sense is when the stakes are lower. Okay. I'll let it happen more. Like I'll let a PC's check succeed if the stakes are fairly lower and it keeps the story moving. That kind of thing. Right.
Very well said. I hadn't thought about it, but that is what I do as well. The lower the stakes, the more let's do this for the excitement and the fun to keep things moving. Right. And to keep it exciting and, drama. Okay. Continue.
Yeah. When you're in like the big high, like again, that's what I mentioned with like dropping bad guys. Like, okay, this is like one of 6 bad guys. They hit him. He has 2 hit points left. Sometimes, like a lot of times I'll just leave him up at 1 or 2 and it's really funny. I'm like, oh, can't get another. You're sure that's the damage? There's not 1 or 2 extra points of damage anywhere. They're like, nope. I'm like, okay, he's still standing, and that's just funny because everybody knows they just put the guy to 1, right? You got to let that happen a lot. But then sometimes it'll be like, okay, I look around the room. I see people are tired. This fight has gone on. They drop the dude. And that's what I'm talking about. That's that emotional intelligence.
Yeah. You're reading the room. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
When the stakes are super high, usually, unless it's going to mean something very, very, very bad for the game, then yes, I agree with the statement you said before. I'll let the dice sort of tell the story. Like I'm just as interested to see where it goes as anybody else, right? Like if you're at a big clash with a boss, it's like a big moment, then yeah, like somebody could die. It's an appropriate time for a PC to potentially get killed.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what this is for. But if it's like some low stakes yard trash fight on the way in, I'm probably not going to ice somebody most of the time.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe once in a while.
And
but most of the time I'll be like, instead of hitting for 10, which I know would put you down, they hit for 8. You're at 2. Congratulations. Okay.
And remember those highly dramatic moments, especially when it comes to death. Like more often than not, you're not that final arbiter because the players are rolling their death save. I have had like the times where players die around our table, especially in these like fluffy editions or around death, is when they rolled the crit 20 on the death or the crit run on their death save, excuse me.
Yeah.
And they're just boom. Yep. That's max death.
Just drop.
Done. You can't do anything with that.
I don't know what those death checks are anymore, John. I've purged that from my mind. You can go to neg 10 and then you die.
Yeah.
That's what happens, buddy.
And that bleeding just keeps it ticking down. It just feels much more natural. I mean, I know when in my times in my life where I'm watching someone bleed out with their brain on the sidewalk, I assume it's much closer to the second edition system.
You could save somebody. It's amazing.
Yeah, if I sit there and stare at them for long enough, I'm like, yeah, this feels like about 1 hit point a tick. Yeah, that feels
like about 1 hit point a tick.
All right,
exactly.
You've had a couple. All right, I'll bandage up your brain. Let me squish that back into the
slight side note: ruttigers that you bleed a D. It still uses the neg 10 thing, but you bleed a D4, which is materially different. Yeah, it adds a lot of drama to that roll, right? Because if somebody's at like neg 7, you're like, well, there's one result here that'll kill me.
Oh no!
So, it is funny.
Oh wow, yeah.
But anyways,
I like that. Okay, yeah. So there is that like you don't have control over those true dramatic moments when it comes to life and death, oftentimes in the game. And here's the other thing: when you talked about in those high intensity moments, the big points in your campaign where if you look at it, if it was a graph, like a line graph, there's peaks and valleys and peaks and valleys. If there's a peak, I think you need to do your best to let that play out organically, because for your own fun too, if you're running a game, and for your players, though, like, oh my gosh, this happened. I did not see this happening.
Right.
That's fun.
Yeah,
That's the stuff that's why it keeps us going to be a return GM, is like, I don't always have the answers. I don't know what's going to happen. I got to go home after this session and think about this. What happens now? That big bad was not supposed to die, or that surprise reveal of you're the villain, it was supposed to be them, but then you thought it was somebody else, and now it's here, and now what do we do? Like, this is the part that keeps it exciting, and it keeps.
They discovered something they shouldn't have because somebody miracled a check, right, or something like that. Yeah, like, I'll give them the information, right? Like, that's the thing. At the high tension moments, I think honestly that's where you let the dice tell, because that's what becomes memorable moments, right? That everybody then has to navigate together, and that creates the tension, the interest. I think it's exactly what I said. It's the low stakes, the low interest moments. That's where you can just be like, kind of whatever. Let's get this going.
And so I guess to put a bow on like how, and I think that's really interesting because you and I haven't actually talked before on our DM style with fudging, and we were basically directly aligned in this. You do it very minimally for the fear that doing more often than not is only going to cause problems. So they will never know when it happened. That is the key for me. Is I have DMs that, through their nonverbals, I wrote a note down here. For Christ's sake, if you're ever going to be able to fudge a dice roll, you got to have a good poker face. I have people, I know exactly every time they're bullshitting, because like they pause more than normal, or they look around more than normal, or they give a smirk with their eyes that they didn't know they're giving. I can read you.
This is the tell. If you're not tracking hit points and you roll the dice and your eyes go, and then you're like, hey, how many hit points do you have?
Yeah. Yep.
And then you're like, you have 13? Oh, I did 12 damage. Oh, so weird, right? Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah. I want you to be a real good liar if you're going to fudge dice rolls. And you know what? If you're not a good liar, I want you to be my friend, because that's the kind of person I want in my life, right? I want a person that's not going to lie straight to my face and I can't tell. I don't want that. So if you're a bad liar, maybe don't fudge them at all, because we have to keep this sense of reality and belief in the world that we're spinning here in front of us. We want to be engaged in it. And if I'm pulled out of it because of you can't fudge a dice roll and not give your little devilish smirk, then don't do it. So don't.
For those people, marking stuff is the easiest way to then fudge, because like, I'll give you the easy example. If you're that type of person where you can't keep your face straight while you roll dice, what you can do is, so I track my hit points with like dry erase. Everything, as you know, everything in my area is dry erase boards, right? Okay. So on it's
like you live in a cube of dry erase. That's Vince's basement.
Correct. That's like literally my entire tabletop is dry erase. My DM's tabletop is dry erase. I have 16 feet of dry erase around the table. Yes, John's seen my D&D space. And like let's say I want the monster to stay alive. Somebody says, okay, I hit for 23. I'm like, okay. And then I cross out the old number and I subtract 16.
Yes. That extra layer of like, now I've just tweaked the math, but I still have to do the math. Yep.
Right.
It looks all organic here.
It all looks the same.
Yep.
It's indistinguishable, right? Because I still did all the same actions. I had to sit there and count. Like, that's the easiest way to fudge. Or you go like, they go like, okay, I did 22, and I look at the monster and it says 25, and I'm like, I just cross it out and write 0, and I'm like, you got him.
Yep. You're tricking your own brain to do different math, but it's still having to run the numbers, and it all works out the same. Good call. Good call. So yeah, we like do it not that often. And you do it when the stakes are low. We're doing it to keep, I usually say, like, if I'm doing it to keep the action moving, to keep my players engaged, that was the time to do it. You don't want to like just shove things along. You don't want to shuffle them from one room to another when we're at a high tension, important moment. If you're in the highest tower of Strahd's castle, we're not shuffling you through quicker by making the dice roll speed up. That's not what we're here for. We're here for the highest part of the drama in the story. So that's pretty much it for me. Is, do it quickly, do it when we need to get through stuff. Don't do it in high tension moments.
Yeah, and even in the low tension, you're not doing it every time, because I'm afraid people are going to mishear what we're saying. Like, I want everybody to really hear what we're saying here, which is that's in the lower. The reason you do it in the lower energy times is because at the high intensity moments, everybody at your game is highly engaged.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And you can look around your table in a boss fight or some dramatic scene, some confrontation, right? Something that like high narrative, high tension, high combat, high danger, any of those things. You'll watch the people at your table and they're actually all be like leaned in. Nobody's on their phone, right?
Yep.
They've physically gotten into the game, right? They're physically closer. That's a time where you don't really need to do it, again, unless something is going to go like way off the rails. Okay. Like, I'll give an example of where I've changed it even in like a super high tension moment before, where like the monster's opening salvo. Okay. Just like I start with a big AoE spell, because of course that's always a fun thing to do to the PCs to start, right? You drop a big fireball on them. Right. That's fun. Okay. Gets them all injured right at the start of the fight, puts them into panic mode.
Yeah.
Great way to start a fight.
Right.
Okay. And you do that and you accidentally roll just like darn near max, right? And you're like, okay, well, I wanted to mess the party up. I wasn't looking to literally flatline 4 out of the 5 people at the table in round 1 before anybody went. Like, this is going to be similarly unrewarding if I just instantly TPK everyone. Okay. And they never did anything. They're not going to walk away from that experience feeling like, yay, we experienced a fun story where the dice told the story, because we all died round 1 without taking an action.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's where I'll be like, again, because yes, you keep a good concept there, hit points. The fireball should have done 30 and you rolled like a great character. We've all had this moment, right? Where it was just like, okay, well, it was supposed to do 30 damage and I did 45. I was like 4 damage off max or something or whatever,
Yikes. Yeah.
It's like, okay, 33 is the damage. That's still going to feel completely believable to everybody, right? And they're still going to be scared. Like, you achieved your goal. You scared the crap out of them because they all suddenly are like rolling saves like, okay. Oh God, I made it. Oh, thank God. Right. Like,
yeah.
But like, you didn't, again, that's the kind of high intensity stuff where it's just going to go completely off the rails because of the dice got into the like beyond third standard deviation weirdness.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in the low intensity time, the problem is the reason you do fudge there some is because that's when people are already very likely to be disengaged.
Yeah.
Right.
Or on the edge of it. Right.
Yes. And so by just little nudges occasionally here or there, you can like see, they're flagging. They're feeling tired. This isn't, they're like, okay, we got to get them through this part. They're not as dialed in as I hope they would be. Okay. Yeah. You're successful. Right. Or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
My final,
and then brings them back in and you keep going.
My final thing I want to say on this is that like the thing you're talking about, I guess we could now aptly name the Travis effect, is like, you are doing your best, and this is a learned skill, and this is something we want to be really active with. I would say if there's number one thing that if you want to get better as being a DM, it's the thing that I try to always get better at, because I know I'm not perfect, is that being present. being present in the feeling, the temperature of the room, understanding what the players are reacting to, what is piquing their interests, what are they engaged with, what are they not. If that is what you are trying to really use your active brain power as a DM to do, because you only have so much brain power at a session. If you're spending the majority of your mental energy on that, instead of your majority of your mental energy on reviewing what the fucking words on the page say in the book, then you're
Right.
doing it right. If you are being
Yep.
proactive and you are being there, engaged with the players, then those minor fudges, one every session, maybe, that is that, then you're doing it right because you're using it with purpose. You're using it as an additional tool that you can manipulate. And the final thing I want to say is the more experienced you are as a DM, the more you recognize this as a tool that you use. The less experienced you are, I want you to avoid doing dice fudging, because it's the age old adage of you need to be a master of the tools or you need to be a master of the rules to know which ones you can break. If you are
Some
not
of them can be bent.
yeah,
Others can be broken.
right. But if you do not truly have a strong grasp of them, me telling you or somebody else telling you how to break them isn't actually helping you because you don't have a confidence of when to do it. You need to first learn those. So if you're a newer GM, I would say let's not stress about dice fudging. You'll learn those times when you're like, after the fact, you'll be like, ooh, you know what? Looking back on it, I probably should have had not have that giant slug total party wipe us. Drew, Ginger Jesus, Vince knows him. You may know him. You may have a Ginger Jesus in your group as a brand new DM and he TPK'd you. Let that happen. You've learned a good moment.
We literally had that exact thing happen with the first time one of our like there's a person in our group. The first time she GM'd, she TPK'd us in like game 2. And she was horrified. And I was like, well, this is a good learning moment.
Right.
We were fine with it. Like we were like, oh, it was a fun thing, right? But yes, it was a good learning moment for her, for sure.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. You understand now when and only in those moments do you pull that tool out and utilize it. But
I want to also mention the player side because we mentioned we'd come back to it. Players can't cheat with their dice. I've played with cheaters, people who cheat with their dice.
I have
it's
as well.
really horrible and awful. Like, please don't do it. Just freaking as a player, let the dice win for God's sakes. Like, do not just roll in public.
Yeah.
Your roll's your roll.
Right.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't cheat at a collaborative game. We're all telling a story together, for God's sakes. But if at the same time, I never stop the person. It's like, look, man, if this is what's going on in your life that you need this, I'm just going to let you have this. Okay. Like, it sucks, but whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to know how bad your life is going that you feel the need to cheat at this situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Like, but where I think PCs can cheat, right? And this is something you mentioned in the notes, is like in being creative and trying to do stuff off book, off rules. Can I do this thing to do this thing? What if we get together and we do this? Could I try this thing? Well, that's not in the rules, right? That's them trying to, like, nobody would call that cheating. I just do want to say that, like, that's the way the players should be allowed to get creative, and you should foster that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right? Where they say, look, I don't have this skill or I don't have this thing, but if the two of us do this together, can we make this outcome happen? Yeah. Yeah, that works. That's very creative. Let them go off book in that way. And maybe that means they make an easier roll, or they don't even make a roll at all, or they get a chance at something that would otherwise be very hard. Right. And let that kind of stuff happen, because that's how the players, quote unquote, like, cheat. That's how they break the walls of the matrix and create and make the world real.
Right.
Right. By being creative problem solvers.
Yeah. If it in the moment, one of your players has this devious plan that feels like cheating, that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
That's a good thing, because that means that they've thought this through. If they have that smirk on their face and they're like, oh, they're not at their post right now, are they? Like, wait, no, no, that's not in the rules. If you have to say to yourself, that's not in the rules, that's why I say no, I'm going to lump you right in with that cheater that cheats as a player and rolls fudges what their plus to hit is, because
Exactly.
you're arbitrarily saying no because it's not in the book, and I can't find the line in the book where it says I can. That's the glory of this game. That is what, like, it's what's between the lines that really creates the things we are most, memorable, and we really have the most fun with. So don't live and die by any rule system. That's the glory of this game, is like, yeah, just let that happen and let those good ideas flourish. And the reason I even wrote that down is because Vince and I can straight up say that's not cheating, but there is a good contingent of people that would lump it in the similar boat. And I don't think it should be done so.
Right. I agree completely. Ultimately, again, it comes back to, we mentioned at the very beginning, but what you're all trying to do together, I mean, this is like the take home point of so many of our episodes, and yet it's so easily forgotten. Like, what you're trying to do is have a fun time together and tell a cool story, right? And sometimes that will require you to step in both sides of the equation, to step outside of the rules, right? That's why this game has endured.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? These games endure because in a video game, you can't do that, right? Like, it is what it is. The code is the code. Okay. But you're bounded here only by your imagination, and you shouldn't ever let anything else constrain you if it means that the overall situation will be more interesting, more compelling, more engaging, more fun, a better story for everybody at the table. There you go.
Here we go. We got there. All right, you Gazebo cheaters. We know you're dirty dice fudgers, and we love you for it. Not despite it, but specifically for it. Like, we like that.
That's right.
We like that you're cheaters. That makes us happy. It makes me sleep well at night, knowing that I'm not the only one that's fudged a dice in this world. You don't want to be the only one that's ostracized for that. So thanks for joining us, everyone, this week. We'll be back again next week with another new episode. We hope that between now and then that you fudge multiple dice and you look at your players or your DM directly in the eye as you lie to them. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.